Dr. Kathy Stepien is here today. She is the founder of the Institute for Physician Wellness. Kathy believes that when physicians gather, powerful things can happen. She is a world leader bringing physicians on retreat. She's the real deal when it comes to being a healer for the frontline healers. Besides this, she's a board-certified pediatrician, a certified coach, and a super mom to 2 teenage boys, Dr. Kathy. Since 2016, Kathy has helped thousands and thousands of physicians around the globe. And I think it's really important that we have this conversation about how you've done it, Kathy. She knows how it feels to want to feel better, but not know how. Welcome to you. Thank you so much for being in this conversation with me.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I was emailing with you, or I had emailed you because we had happened to have another physicians retreat, the first ever at Imiloa this past week. And it was a bit of an experiment, right? Physicians coming together. I mean, maybe not for you, but for us at Imiloa, it was like, how's this going to work? Physicians in the top of their, like literally the top, like medical directors of some of the largest hospitals in the country, dentists, endocrinologists. How is this going to work? It is so needed. What you are doing in the world is so needed. And what's so insane to me is, and I'm sorry to blah, 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 but it's such a credence. It acknowledges what you're doing in a massive way. Physicians came because they thought it was going to be a great continuing education opportunity. Come to Costa Rica, continue education. I'm not stuck in a hotel room. Fine. What they got from being able to gather with this level of intention with this group, and I imagine you see the same thing, is they're able to explore authenticity in a new way. And I was so happy, just as a human being, watching people who have maybe shut down or suppressed so much for the benefit of others actually have the ability to enjoy Imiloa. So when you were on this train long before this, when did you recognize as a pediatrician or as a peer of others that this had to be the work that you do in the world?
Great question. And before I dive into that, I just want to say that this is absolutely my world. Like for me, I'm thinking, of course they came there and had an amazing experience. And it was probably life-changing and career-changing. I get goosebumps hearing you describe it. And as an outsider to that world, it was probably a bit surprising. And maybe there were some things revealed to you and your team. But for me, it's absolutely, this is what happens when physicians gather and we carve out time to do some work that is for ourselves rather than for others. Just what a profound experience it can be. So I'm so glad that you shared that with me.
Yeah, of course. And when did you find that you needed this type of work, that you needed to create the consultancy that you have and the experiences that you now curate? When was the aha moment for you as a physician?
Yeah, let's dive into that. It was in before 2016. I actually opened the Institute for Physician Wellness in 2016. But of course, there's all the lead up to being able to do that. And I opened it specifically to bring physicians together, to learn. We get continuing medical education, of course, but also to connect and to heal and to grow in some really important ways. I had been gathering people my whole life. I've always been a person who I love to bring people together. I did that in my first career as a physical therapist. I did that in graduate school in philosophy. I did that when I was in medical school. I had my 2 boys in medical school, and I realized that as a new mom, in a pretty wonderful but also intense training period, that it would be helpful to connect with other new parents. And so I gathered other medical students, men and women who were becoming parents, and we formed a little group. And it's like I've always been a gatherer of people, and recognize the value in those connections and how we all grow. We all learn and have fun and enjoy things in a different way. And I reached a stage professionally. My kids were a little older. I had been working as an attending and kind of had my feet on the ground after busy residency years and young children years. And I realized I'm ready, because you don't do this without being ready, like in some way, personally, emotionally.
You don't do what without being
ready? You don't bring people together. You don't create a healing experience, a growing, a gathering, without also kind of doing the inner work. Okay, I'm ready to do this now. So I think personally, I came to that stage, and then I looked around. I'm like, physicians. Now it's time for me to bring physicians together, my physician colleagues, and from all over North America, really, to come together to do such important work. So that's a long answer to your question.
It's
around 2016, and I can tell you, kind of similar to what I do with many things in my life, when I was ready, then look out. 2016 came, and we had, in our first year, we had 3 physician wellness retreats. I literally jumped off the cliff. I'm like, we're doing this. We're all in.
Where, in the U.S.? You did that in the U.S.?
We had 2 of them were in the U.S. and 1 was outside of the U.S. And in our first year, and I didn't even have a website. I didn't know anything about, I had to figure out, what is this whole Gmail thing? How does a business run? I had to figure out a lot.
Practicing physicians don't have to email? I mean, you had to
Well, but it was just different than the world that I was living in. Is when you're in medicine, you have kind of a bubble, right? There's your own medical bubble. And time and energy, everything's focused on that. And so to step out and be like, okay, well, what's it like? How do people get websites? Who builds them? Who maintains them? How do we communicate with other physicians so they know we're offering these events? Things like that, like all of that whole world of putting together a business around this desire to bring people together. It's like, well, how do I make that sustainable and really reach people? That part of it, I was completely naive to, and there's been a lot of learning.
I mean, I imagine that you're probably speaking to many physicians or people in the medical field just by sharing your story, going from being in this very secular, I don't know if secular is the right word, but just very focused practice for how many years between, when did you go into residency? What year did you go into residency, for example?
I started residency in 2007.
So 2007. So you're in this machine basically for 10 years. And then here you are coming out, you're like, I'm going to build a business around physician wellness, and learning that. I imagine that speaks to physicians, because maybe physicians aren't being called to build something around physicians wellness, but maybe they're being called to something else. And because they've been in this sort of, like I said, machine for so many years, maybe it's a little scary to step outside the box. So I imagine you're speaking to people like that too. I'm wondering, you say that every physician, Kathy, deserves a coach. While it seems obvious, why isn't it happening?
I think it's beginning to happen more and more. I think it hasn't because people just haven't known about it. And perhaps historically, it hasn't been recognized to the depth that it has. We've certainly known for decades by shared experience, by case report, by qualitative research, that coaching helps physician well-being. We've known that for decades. But there are now randomized clinical trials that demonstrate that by some of the leading institutions in the United States, in our country. And so it's like, okay, not only do we think it is good, now we have evidence that it is good. And these are published in our top peer-reviewed journals. Like, this is the real deal gold standard research that is out there saying, wait a minute, you want to improve quality of life for physicians? Here's how. This really moves the needle. Do you want to improve resiliency? Do you want to improve self-compassion? Do you want to improve quality of life? Here's how we do it, right? And here's the evidence. So I think as that piece of it, physicians, we're all scientists, and we like evidence. So I think as the evidence has grown, as the body of evidence has grown, it has become a little more acceptable or more comfortable to open ourselves to the idea that, oh, wait a minute, this helps thousands and thousands of other people. It can help physicians too.
Mm. And do you think that a coach for a physician has to be a physician themselves, or can a physician seek out, how would a physician even seek out a coach? Is there a physician's coaching network? I mean, obviously you, but how does that happen?
Great question. I don't think a physician has to work with another physician coach. I think that the coach may be a physician or may not be a physician. And I have certainly worked with both. I think it depends. That said, I think there's phenomenal value for physicians in working with other physicians who are coaches, because we really understand the life of a physician in a very different way. And I don't want to be excluding people or almost be snobbish about it. But I do have to say that when you are a physician, you're in a unique situation in life, not only because of your training, but also because of your life experiences and the responsibility you have. So to be able to meet with a coach who also has some of that shared experience, I think can be particularly powerful. And then as far as finding a coach, much of it is often word of mouth. And I think there's value to that. As a physician, it matters to me what other physicians who I know and like and trust, it matters to me what their opinion is. So I think word of mouth is a wonderful way to ask about finding a coach. There's other ways as well, though. Physicians can certainly go online and Google it. There are groups of us. There's actually hundreds and hundreds of physicians now who are trained as coaches. In fact, we're holding a physician coaching summit later this year where we will be gathering physician coaches to do some additional training and networking.
I would love to introduce you to Dr. Chang, who's our other client who just hosted this physician's wellness retreat. I'm going to introduce y'all off camera, because I think just for y'all to know of each other, if you don't already, he's out of Houston. Where were you out of, Kathy?
I live in Juneau, Alaska.
Oh, you're in Alaska.
I am. Yep.
I mean, isn't that just the reaction?
Right outside is my window is the Pacific, which I know you're close to the Pacific. It's like we're just north of you, a few thousand miles.
A few thousand miles. You're doing this out of Juneau. That is so cool to me. Okay, is that also where you were raised?
It's not where I raised. I came up here shortly out of my undergrad for a summer. I was at a stage of life. I was full of adventure and wanderlust and checking things out. I came up to Alaska for the summer to work at the hospital here. I was a physical therapist at the time. And I had been considering medical school and all kinds of things, and came here for the summer. And one thing led to the next. And here it is decades later. I left for graduate school, for medical school, residency, all of that.
And you kept coming back.
But we've been back. We've been back now raising our kids here for, 13 years or so.
That is so cool.
Yeah. It's a small community. I think, it's interesting when you choose to move to a new place at different stages in life, it would make different decisions, right? And I think that I chose to come here in my 20s for different reasons than this stage of life. I think, one might wonder, what on earth are you doing as a pediatrician in a small town, relatively small town, Alaska, right? And it is wonderful, I can say, to be a part of a community. I have done a bunch of work in Seattle. I was commuting down to Seattle for years, or to Washington State for years, to do pediatric work as well as a hospitalist. But it's also wonderful to be a part of a community where you really get to know people across time.
So cool.
That's my story.
This is great. I love this. Well, I would love to connect you and Chang in Texas, because the fact that you're starting a coaching summit is just so inspiring. I'm curious, how do you return physicians to a space of having fun and being authentic in your retreats? You talk about this a lot. And how do you return them to a space of having fun and being authentic? And it's really, this is something that you've become known for. And I'm curious what you've discovered that's allowed you to do this.
I think by having fun and being authentic myself, right? That as a leader of retreats, I very intentionally and carefully and mindfully create a healing environment. There's an environment to help support healing and growth and learning. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be working with Imiloa as well, because I think that the location in which we're doing this work has a profound impact as well. So I think part of it is for me to come wholeheartedly, authentically, having done my own work, my own learning, my own growth, allows me to, in a way, give permission to the other physicians who are there. All of us wear our professional hats. Like, we're really good at putting on that white coat and being in doctor mode. Like that, to be honest, it's where I'm so comfortable, where all of us like, oh, it feels so familiar and comfortable for me to be in a hospital or in a clinic in that role. My whole adult life, that's what I've been doing is caring for patients. So to be able to comfortably step into setting that aside for a bit and exploring a different piece of ourselves, it takes intentionality to be able to do that, and to make it as impactful and as transformative and joyful as possible. So I think setting the tone, setting the space for that allows other people to begin to explore that piece of ourselves as well, that a lot of times is actually kind of put away as we go through our days.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to having our team co-create with you and yours, because I think that that's going to be, it's wonderful that you set an intention of fun and authenticity. That really resonates. And I'm sure it'll resonate with the right physicians who this retreat is for. One of the things that you do on these retreats and in your coaching practice, Kathy, is you help physicians specifically develop skills that empower them to create a life that is in alignment with what it is they're really wanting. You teach mind-body coaching tools. When did practicing medicine, for practitioners, for those of you who practice medicine, when did it get so out of balance? Obviously, there's a need for someone like you to teach mind-body tools. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it, which, yeah, it just occurred to me. When did practicing medicine become so out of balance for the people that are practicing it? What is the root cause?
Wow. I don't know for sure. I don't know that we could pinpoint it to a particular decade or time or place. I do think that the culture of medicine has really changed over the millennia, and the practice of medicine has really changed. And there's so many beautiful, beautiful things about the culture of medicine. We really value science. We value service. We value technology and precision and efficiency. It's like there's beautiful things. We value analytical reasoning and problem solving, and we also value connection and heart space as well. Unfortunately, I think often how medicine is practiced now is that there's also some values in our culture that don't feel so great. There's a lot of us who push ourselves way too hard. We have, in fact, one of the study came out not too long ago that if primary care physicians did everything they were expected to do according to the regulations, then we would need like 27 hours a day for each clinic day. It's like we have impossible tasks to be performed in an impossible time frame.
But is that the individual, or is that the external forces, the insurance companies, and the way that healthcare is set up in the States?
No, I think it is. It's how medicine has evolved with lots of drivers, and then I think physicians step into this world and assume this role of part of a system that does not necessarily support physician well-being, right? So we expect physicians to work hard. Sometimes the task that is expected and required is not comparable to the time and energy that is available. And as with physicians, we go through our training and adopt certain belief systems and the cultural beliefs, the cultural values and norms. Again, some of which are beautiful and some of which are not particularly healthy. And I think this drive to unattainable, non-sustainable efforts does no one any good. So to answer your questions, I think medicine itself has changed, absolutely. I don't know that there was ever a perfect time in medicine. I think there's a lot of beautiful things about medicine now. I also know that we have work to do to bring medicine into a place where it feels that physician well-being is that the well-being of doctors is not at the expense of delivering care.
It should be the first thing. It should be the first thing.
An integral part of it, an absolutely integral part of.
But it's not how the whole system. I mean, I don't know anything. I'm a college dropout. But your residencies, I have enough friends who are doctors that people going through residency, it would string a person out who is really strong mentally and everything. So it's almost like it starts from probably before then, but it starts there where you have these insurmountable obstacles of like sleep deprivation and lack of time. And not only that, but then you have lives on you. It's like, yeah. And so it's not prioritized in school and in the training. So why would it be prioritized later? I mean, I know you're advocating that it should be, but it's just like, it's not happening then. Why would it start later? Why not just keep running people through it?
Right. And it won't start later unless we make it. Right. And that's one of the things I love so much about this movement that we have in medicine is, wait a minute. Not only are we changing the lives of attending physicians, we're changing the lives of residents and medical students so that all of us are.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, have you just given up on the education side and you're just getting them when they're certified, but you're doing this for residents too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's an important piece of this, is to recognize that at every, like, physician coaching and physician well-being, in fact, it's actually required by ACGME now, has resident well-being as a core issue that needs to be addressed. Good. But physician coaching in every aspect, medical students, residents, and attendings in every stage, early career, mid and late career, moving into retirement, like coaching now and efforts for physician well-being are in every aspect of medicine. And that is super exciting to me. That really is part of the movement that we are contributing to.
That's great. Beautiful. I'm so happy that you're part of this movement, Kathy. And you're the perfect ray of sunshine, at least in our time together. Perfect ray of sunshine to be a part of that movement. I'm curious, what can happen when physicians who have the mindset of, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, which I'm sure many people have that. I mean, I talked to a few physicians, like I said last week in the other physicians retreat that we had. Ironic that we're talking now from that, a week after that. But this idea of, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, which I'm sure is shared among many physicians. What can happen for physicians who have this belief system or have this reoccurring thought? What can happen to them when they come to your retreat?
Oh my goodness. Life changing. And the really fun part and meaningful and joyful part of this work is that I see that life change time and time and time and time again.
In what capacity? How do you see it? How does it materialize?
I see so often, it's hard. It's the I don't know how much I can keep how much longer I can keep this up. It's almost met with that's almost a whispered thought. I'm not sure if I can even say that out loud. And you say it out loud and the dam just breaks, literally. And I think there's this awakening, this realization is like, wow, you know what? I was struggling more than I realized. And now what? Now, how do I go from here? And, there's a process to all of that. So there's this awareness of, where am I at? Really, where am I at? And there's also so much joy in that. Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't need to be this way. There's so much a brighter future, a life ahead for me that I can create, that is in alignment with what I want. And I think helping physicians open to that possibility is part of what happens on retreat. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't just have to keep surviving. I don't just have to keep working so hard with so much grit in that, just that pushing and pushing and pushing, that there really can be so much joy in medicine if they choose to stay in medicine, and so much joy outside of medicine if that's what's right for them. And so this recognition, and then developing these skills, like literally, what are the practices I can start doing that will help me shift, that will help me perhaps examine some of the beliefs that I have and whether they're serving me or not. What am I feeling on a regular basis and why? What's going on in my body and why? What do I want to intentionally do differently or think differently? Or how do I want to show up differently? And to be honest, for so many of us, it's really a skill set, right? It's like, how do I set healthy boundaries? How do I advocate for myself without feeling like a jerk? How do I set myself up for success intentionally so that I'm putting myself in opportunities that support my what I want, and avoiding those opportunities that just kind of suck the energy and life out of me, right? So it's all an opening. It's an opening to possibility. It's an opening. There's a discovery, and there's healing. There's a lot of healing that goes along as well.
So for those of you who are listening, are you a physician and maybe you're stressed out just at your baseline? Maybe you're exhausted from a lifetime of having to be in go mode, or you're unclear about the next steps despite knowing that something has to change. What would it be like for you if you take action and listen to this whisper that Kathy's talking about? You know you've probably been having it. If you're a physician that doesn't have a coach, or a physician in the US or anywhere really in North America today, you probably have had this whisper. And what if now you could actually join a retreat that could start to give you some of the answers that you're seeking? Kathy, can you talk me through a little bit about the flow of the retreat and what physicians can expect as part of the experience?
Absolutely. The retreat will be with about 20 other physicians. So everyone there will be a physician. People are welcome to bring their +1, but the actual work we do as we gather will be physicians. And it's really important to me that we protect this space because, again, when physicians meet with physicians, it's powerful. And I get contacted all the time by non-physicians who are in leadership roles or other professionals, nurses, lawyers, veterinarians. And I try to support them and direct them to the people who can help them. But so when people come to the retreat, they're going to know that, okay, we're doing this work with other physicians who get it, who get what it's like to be a physician. There'll be 20-ish of us, and that size, I think, is just the perfect size for getting to know each other and building a community. And I don't want it to be too small. I don't want it to be too big. I think that size of about 20 people is absolutely perfect as well. So about 20 physicians. And then each day we'll gather in the morning, and we'll have some mindful movement, as a group to help us kind of get grounded and show up and settle in. And then we'll move into our morning workshops. And each morning workshop will have a little bit different focus to it. We'll be looking at where we're at now, kind of taking stock of what's working, what's not working. We'll be looking at discovering what it is that we want at this stage. So the biopsychosocial aspects, especially as a pediatrician, I'm very developmentally focused. And we know that kids go through different stages, but that doesn't just end when they hit 18. Like, we grow and develop across our entire lifespan. So taking that biopsychosocial perspective of development and looking at, okay, in our 20s, most physicians chose to go into medicine and made certain choices of that impact today. Do the values and interests and priorities of the 20-year-old physician still resonate with the 30-year-old, or maybe the 40 or 50 or wherever that physician is?
Important question, and I imagine it's a question physicians are scared to answer. Because what if it's changed, Kathy?
Yes. What if it's changed? And you know what? It should change. It's supposed to change, but we don't acknowledge that. It's almost scary to acknowledge that, but absolutely, we better be growing and changing across our lifespan.
Yeah.
So we'll be digging into that with each of our morning workshops, various aspects of that. In the afternoons, we actually have free time. We have free time to do things individually and then also as groups if that is what we'd like. I'm an introvert. I know not everybody wants to always be with the entire group the whole time, and I really respect that. And also recognize there are some people who that is an important piece of our gathering is to go off and go swimming together or whatever it might be.
And then in the evening, smart, by the way, if I can just acknowledge that, not only from a physician perspective, but we were talking to another one of our quite influential hosts, and she has, some high status people, whatever you want to call it, some people that whatever, and she gives them the entire afternoon off. It's not a physician's retreat, but she gives the entire afternoon off, and it is so smart. She does her intense kind of workshop stuff in the morning, And then they have the afternoon for fellowship. They can go off campus. She hosts 4 times a year at Imiloa, sold out. So it's obviously working. So this is a great thing to introduce to your folks who, might see this also as a chance to really get away, go within. If you are an introvert, you don't want to be around people all day, every day anyways. So great structure. I love it. And you were going to share what happens at night.
Yeah, in the evening we'll have dinner, and then we have the opportunity to regather as a group if that is what speaks to people, and do so in a perhaps less focused way, a more casual coming together to kind of close the circle of the day. And you're right. I think the other leader you mentioned, I have found, we've been doing this. I don't know how many, I've lost track now of how many retreats we've done over the years. And I realized that having this time, this focused time in the morning, in balanced with that free time in the afternoon is like each piece of it is essential. And there's so much intentionality about how our days are structured and how we've designed even the flow of the week, to really support us all as we're growing and developing.
So many things that you've shared, even though I'm not a physician, has kind of checked the box and like, oh yeah, that's something for me to reflect on. So I imagine physicians hearing from you in this way is really powerful. And I really appreciate you. And I love that you've chosen Imiloa to collaborate with you on this, Kathy.
I'm so excited to come down to Imiloa. We have all kinds of gatherings at all different locations. And what I love about Imiloa and our retreat there is that it's immersive in a different way because it's 5 nights, 6 days. One, most of us are gonna have to fly down to Costa Rica, which is an adventure itself, right? But we get there, there's like this spaciousness of time. Like, okay, we are really carving out time for a reset, to recharge, and to make a shift. And that expansiveness is so exciting to me. It's very different than a girls' getaway for a weekend, which is fun too, right? But it's very different purpose and place to it all. So I'm super excited to come down to Imiloa.
So if you're feeling called or curious, Dr. Kathy Stepien's retreat is February 4th to 9th, 2024. February 4th to 9th, 2024. This is a perfect time in Costa Rica. Awesome dates, Kathy. And tickets start at $5,000. If you want more information, you can go to imiloainstitute.com/Kathy to learn more. Thank you, Dr. Kathy Stepien. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you in February. Bye.
Bye-bye.